On the 19th of May 2011, the Sri Lanka military effectively concluded the 26-year operation against the LTTE, marking the end of terrorism and separatism in Sri Lanka. After successfully liberating the eastern province, the Sri Lankan army marched towards Kilinochchi, the administrative and de facto capital of the LTTE's envisioned state of Tamilam. But when the Sri Lankan armed forces reached Kilinochchi, this is what they saw. The administrative capital of the LTTE had become a ghost town. The LTTE had herded the civilian population of the city and the adjacent villages to areas unknown and still under their control. The structures of the main buildings still stand tall. There are no signs of shelling or use of heavy weaponry on the area. The LTTE removed the roofing sheets of these buildings to build their makeshift settlements. The infrastructure of the town and power supply lines are heavily damaged. The actual damages were done from the inside by the LTTE. They had removed all the medicine, medical equipment, other equipment, and facilities from hospitals, schools, and other government administrative buildings to facilitate makeshift hospitals to treat LTTE war casualties. They also grabbed food and other commodities, which were provided by the Sri Lankan government for the benefit of the people in this area. Adding more to their crimes against humanity, they destroyed reservoirs that had supplied water for the farmlands of the north for thousands of years, and drinking water storage tanks that supplied water to thousands of civilians. This is the area that was known as the Rice Bowl of Sri Lanka, mainly because of the fertility of the lands and the well-structured irrigation networks. People who were gathered from various towns and villages from Mannar, Mullaitivu, and Mankulam were herded further away from advancing Sri Lankan troops. These people lived in makeshift arrangements provided by the LTTE. As the Sri Lankan forces advanced steadily, the LTTE withdrew, abandoning these makeshift settlements one after the other, further into the LTTE high security zone. Further, the LTTE laid large numbers of anti-personnel mines, booby traps, pressure mines, not only to impede the forward march of the troops, but also to make sure that those who were taken forcibly by them wouldn't come back to their homes. Yet again, they had demonstrated their disregard for civilian life. It was the innocent Tamil citizens who managed to escape from their so-called liberators, who revealed these horrific details of their forced evacuation, torture, and humiliation. The people were later compelled to flee to the no-fire zones declared by the government to facilitate the safe return of the displaced. But the terrorists moved in secretly with their weapons under the cover of this human shield, with the ulterior motive of using these innocents to gain the sympathy of the Tamil diaspora and the international community at large to their cause. They almost succeeded, owing to the reason that those who gullibly, or even in a partisan manner, accepted what's being dished out by various interested parties and agents with hidden agendas. According to the University Teachers for Human Rights report, this prison held 140 inmates belonging to the Sinhala, Muslim, and Tamil ethnicities. During the last phase of the war, the LTTE, while fleeing with the people, Pottu Aman, the intelligence chief of the LTTE, unhesitatingly ordered the massacre of all detainees who were under their captivity, a phenomenon that was to last until 16th May. The government's appeal to the LTTE to allow these innocent people to leave fell on deaf ears. Thus it became the unenviable responsibility of the security forces to rescue hostages using small firearms with minimum force. This not only delayed and hampered mopping up operations, but also led the forces to take unnecessary and often disastrous risks for themselves. Now the government was assigned the daunting task of rescuing the innocent Tamil civilians from the clutches of their so-called liberators, who used them as a human shield to attack the security forces with mortars, artillery, and other heavy weapons. The government rightly declared that it is its responsibility to provide safe haven to these affected people. Thus, the government appealed to them to move into government-controlled areas so that they could look after them properly. Small groups of people did bravely flee from bad weather, rough conditions, and the inevitable bullets of the tigers to escape from the clutches of their one-time liberators, now turned captives.
I have 2 sons and 1 daughter. I was in a bunker to save my children's life. When the battle was on, the tigers asked us to move a little far, but we were so scared because of the firing. We gave up all our things and we were hiding under the bunker. We didn't have any food, nothing to drink. On the next day morning, when we were having tea, Sri Lankan forces came there and took us here. At that time, they gave us water, buns, and a banana. Today, also we had our meals at 3 o'clock. Now they are taking us into a bus, and once again, they will provide us meals. We really want to go to Vaunir. We really like that place a lot.
Many were shot dead by rebel gunmen, or were killed by bombs exploded amongst them by terrorist suicide bombers. And some of those caught were summarily executed by the LTTE. The innocent civilians were pushed by the LTTE to the limit. The LTTE offered their captured civilians two choices: either to live with them or death, if not. This aerial footage, taken by a military spy camera, clearly shows the LTTE firing at displaced persons to stop them from escaping from their clutches. Even with restraints and impediments, the security forces succeeded in breaching the 3-kilometer Tiger Earth Walkumband and penetrated into the no-fire zone in order to rescue and provide safe passage to thousands of civilians held captive by the Tiger terrorists. The terrorists were further pushed back. The people decided that it was better to die than to live under the LTTE. In the end, the LTTE couldn't stop the public uprising. With this success, the floodgates were opened. The exodus, which began on the 2nd of May, though anticipated, was unprecedented. The displaced, especially the old, women, and children, were visibly worn out, fatigued, starved, and were perceivably harassed, humiliated, and tortured. Many had gunshot injuries, and some had succumbed to death on their way to freedom. This was indeed a new experience and a real challenge to the Sri Lankan government forces, or to any fighting unit in the world for that matter. Being a disciplined unit, unlike the treacherous terrorists, they were inducted in the art of handling people in a humanitarian way during the military training. Thus, with dedication, commitment, and eagerness, they went out of their way to satisfy the immediate needs of this mass of war-weary people. They not only succeeded in providing them with a decent meal, sometimes foregoing theirs, they made available to them even medical facilities close at hand. The compassion, the benevolence of the armed forces was not limited only to refugees fleeing the wrath of the terrorists. The LTD cadres who took up arms against them received equal treatment. This female cadre, who was captured after receiving gunshot injuries in the battle, was treated with respect and empathy instead of hatred and contempt. With the influx of the displaced coming to Pudukkodirupu and Mullaitivu, areas the government forces had secured by then, security forces were entrusted with the responsibility of providing safe passage for them. After completing paperwork at the Omanthe checkpoint, the displaced was sent to temporary relief centers in Vaudia. Considering the numbers and the urgency of the operation, it was indeed a Herculean task. However, as always, the security forces were prepared to accept any challenge that came their way and was seen working selflessly, day and night, to provide relief for these innocent Tamils. The government, as a result of a well-thought-out process, has introduced the concept of relief villages instead of the traditional refugee camps for the displaced in fighting. The concept has now been extremely effective in bringing back normalcy to the lives that had suffered the most horrible conditions under terrorist control for over 25 years to facilitate family reunion. Before sending them to the relief villages, they were identified and registered for their security and safety. In the face of defeat, the LTTE destroyed all belongings of the displaced, left behind in the no-fire zone. The LTTE terrorists under Velapillai Prabhakaran, in their quest for absolute power, never considered peace, discussion and dialogue as options. As described by the FBI, it was a most dangerous and deadly extremist outfit, and using ruthless tactics, had killed so many in its campaign of violence and bloodshed. Even when it was clear that the end was near, they were so power-hungry that they converted the no-fire zone into a battle zone with a human shield to gain time and perhaps international sympathy. However, when the inevitable occurred, they turned to cowardly tactics of destruction. The UN Security Council on Wednesday, the 14th of May 2009, said in a statement that it strongly condemns the LTTE for its acts of terrorism over the years and for its continued use of civilians as human shields, and acknowledges the legitimacy of the government of Sri Lanka to combat terrorism.